Okay, welcome back. Where we left off, we just hit a rather wonderful little error with our day-night cycle. When we hit 90 degrees or like full sun, the light basically just went a bit crazy and started pointing anywhere. And I think the issue with that actually was with the coding and this rotation, because we had it self-referencing its own rotation. I think what that was doing is introducing a slight degree of error when converting from quaternion to rotation, and also restricting it so when the quaternion wanted to recalculate some of the angles to work better in Unity, it couldn't do it because it was referencing itself. So what I've done here is I've actually just replaced that section to something a lot simpler, which is just copying the Y and the Z rotation straight in. So we've got 330 degrees for Y and 0 for Z, so it's no longer self-referencing, and you can actually see something quite interesting. So just switch back to scene view. So our sun is rising correctly, and you can actually see it rising in the sky. And we just have to wait until we get to the center of time, or the day. You can notice the Z value is slightly jumping around. I think that's just a slight degree in error in converting from degrees to quaternion. But as you can see, it's making no difference to the game state at the moment. And when we reach the center, something quite interesting happens, is the Z value actually flips to 180 and the Y value flips to 150. So in effect, Unity optimizes the rotation we're giving it for its own situation. And I think that's what we were trying to do here earlier, is the quaternion was trying to optimize, but it couldn't because we were kept feeding it in the same value, so it couldn't adapt itself. And as you can see here, we've got this really nice thing. As the sun comes down, it's below the horizon, the skybox goes all red and it goes dark. Or it should go dark. So here's the first issue with our script. If we look here, just pause the game. The directional light is currently facing this way, up and to the right. And on our terrain, the area that is being the area up and to the right is actually being lit from below, which obviously isn't realistic if we're thinking about a day-night cycle. So we're actually going to have to make a few modifications to this code. Okay, so if we think about when we want the light, we want to adjust the intensity of our light. And for that, I'm actually going to modify a few things here. So to get the intensity of the light, we're actually going to need to access a light object. So I'm actually going to change this to, I think you can have light here, like this. So once you've got light, you can actually access a few additional things. We've actually changed a few things here, so this is no longer a transform. What we now want to do is get component, and inside this type thing, I'm going to put light. And what this does is it means we don't have to cast down to certain things. This actually returns a light object, which is quite useful. And now directional light no longer has a rotation, so we need to do directional light.transform.rotation. And that modifies our script slightly. So if we go to directional light now, and then you see we now access this intensity function, which is currently set at 1. So I'm going to create a new variable up here called public float, and it's going to be max light intensity. At the moment that's going to sit quite nicely at 1. Okay, so now we want to think about when we want the light to go down. So it's going to be sometime after the sun's gone down, so it's going to be after day length. So if we think about if time is greater than day length, so the sun's actually gone down, we want to slowly decrease the intensity until it's perhaps 0 a bit into the night. If we take time minus day length, so that gives us the time by the end of the day. I'm just going to do the maths in line here. So that could be 10, 20, 30, anything up to day length again. And we divide it by day length. That gives us the proportion we are through the night. And what we want to think about is if that proportion, so float night amount, let's call that. If that proportion is, say, between 0 and 10% through, then we want to scale the intensity in a similar way. So first of all, if night amount is greater than 0 and night amount is less than 0.1. And now we want to scale it between that. So we know it's between 0 and 0.1. So if we just multiply that by 10, so if we first of all set the light intensity, so we do directional light dot intensity equals, then we can do night amount times 10, so that gives us a value between 0 and 1 times our maximum intensity. And this should scale the light down after the end of the night until about 10 seconds in. What I'm actually going to do to test this, hopefully we don't get any errors. Good. I'm actually going to decrease the day length just so we can test this a bit quicker. Let's start it off and see if this works. You see the light is on maximum intensity because it's daytime. Midday, it's coming to night now. We should see this intensity value decrease as the sun goes below the surface there. However, it isn't, because we have an error down here. Directional light or day-night cycle does not exist anymore. We just examine that. If we, I see. This is an issue I've had because we've changed the type of directional light. We need to reassign it. So let's just click that. There we go. So now we have the directional light correct. Quite unusual that it worked up until that point, actually. See it going to night now. The directional light. We'll see if this actually works. Okay, so it does work, but if you noticed, we actually scaled from 0 to 1 in the wrong direction. So what we actually need to do is 1 minus this value, and that should give us the right direction. Another cheat we can use to speed up testing this is we can actually set the time to start off with. So if I go into this and change it to 15, not 153, change it to 15 and then start it again, the sun is already setting. You can see it's scaling down correctly. There we go, so the light goes to almost nothing. It's not essential for me that it goes to completely nothing for this, but it needs to go quite low, so you see we no longer get that lighting effect on the hills. However, when the sun rises again, we do need the light to come back, whereas at the moment it doesn't. So we need to add a second clause in this, which is else if the night amount is greater than 0.9 and night amount is less than 1, we want to set the intensity to first of all we need to give it a scaling between 0 and 1. So just copying and pasting that means I know I've got some of this code right. So instead of night amount, we want night amount minus 0.9. And as we want the light to increase now, we can actually remove that first bit with the 1 minus. So this gives us a scaling between 0 and 1. I've actually got an extra bracket here when I don't need it. Search for that. Cannot implicitly. Oh, I see. This is a mistake I've made here. This should be because we're working in C#. We need to convert these to floats because immediately they're interpreted as double precision floats. So if we just put an F on the end, then that's interpreted correctly. And this should correctly give us the intensity scaling up again. So I'm gonna leave that on 15 actually, so we can see both sides of the story. So it's getting towards night time, sun goes down, the intensity scales to 0. We go through the full night cycle without any lighting effect applied to our terrain. And then when the sun comes back up, we should see the intensity scale back up to 1. There we go, so we see the intensity is scaling back up. They say it goes to almost 1, and that's not quite essential for it to go to completely to 1. We could make a very easy modification to do that, but so for this case it's not essential. Okay, so I think that about wraps it up for this tutorial. We've got a fairly decent day-night cycle going on. I think next time we're going to have a look a bit about camera views and how we're going to view our landscape, and maybe talk a bit about what UI we're going to be working on later on. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.